Let's see. There we are. We are live. I am here with the legend, Mr. Larry Bobka. It is a pleasure to have you on, as your name is associated with so many great club designs and fittings and players and stories and everything else that you can think about. I'm sure that this one is going to be one of the most listened, if not the most listened to, of the 5.5 years I've been doing this. So welcome to Golf 360, Larry.
Well, thanks for having me on. I always appreciate, people that are in the game, that love the game, that want to know more about the game. Yeah, glad to be here and glad I had some time this morning and, just sitting at home, actually a day off and actually have to go teach a lesson this afternoon and then go play golf.
You are a master club fitter, and you have been for many decades. You're at Second Swing, I believe, in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area.
Yep.
Where it's nice and cool this time of year. It's not 95 and 105 index like it is here in Hilton Head, but it's the price we pay for living in a great area. 3 months a year, we get super hot. I get 3 months a year, you get the super cold. So somehow we could combine our two areas, then I think would be great, wouldn't it? But one of the areas that I think is still, after all these years, is more or less the Wild West, is club design and club fitting. And I only say that because I see and talk to so many people who said, well, I got fit for these and I got worse. And I said, well, you didn't get custom fit, you got custom screwed. And not to knock on somebody who might have fit them, but I mean, in what I know about club fitting, if I measure their clubs or this or that and watch their swing, like, these don't even come close to where they should be. So what do you see out there in your decades of experience as far as why do you think that club fitting in some senses is still so poorly done?
I think in a lot of times, and especially now in the age of technology where we have so many numbers and you have the internet, you have all these different shafts, and you'd like to say sometimes fitters tend to overfit. They tend to get carried away. I mean, when somebody walks in the bay, whether walks in the bay or if I was standing on the range at its PGA Tour event, it's like, what's the goal? What do we want to do? What do we want to get out of this? And to me, it's hit that goal, make sure you get the guy what he wants, and then take it from there. You don't have to, I don't have to prove my intelligence or my expertise to a player. All I need to do is say, okay, if we're not hitting our irons good, let's find you an iron that's going to work really well, right? Let's not, I don't have to go into crazy shafts. I don't have to go into crazy lengths or lie angles. One of the things I like to say all the time is, I mean, if you look at the PGA Tour, their clubs are pretty close to standard when it comes to length and lofts and lies. And, so there's a reason they're so good is because they got a lot of God-given talent and they work really hard at it. So that's to me where sometimes we kind of get into this wild, wild west of fitting. So to me, I try to, for lack of a better term, I try to keep it simple because I fit golf clubs back in the days when we didn't have any information, and it was the player talking to me and his eyes and my eyes, and we're just going to make a great set of clubs for you.
Yeah, if you talk to some fitters today or coaches nowadays who are so into the technology, you would ask, I asked them just to irritate the hell out of them. It's like, well, do you think that there were some people that maybe did this without any of this technology and did some really great things? I mean, according to some of these guys, no one could have ever played golf without
Right.
this technology. And I said, well, there's some pretty damn good golf played for the last, 50, 60 years prior to all this. In someone who grew up in, or your career spanned both the use or the no technology as well as utilizing some technology.
Right.
I would have to say along the lines of CAD systems and designing clubs, and then, okay, let's go see how it works and hit them, even into today. So you develop the keen sense and the experience of knowing what to do and what not to do. And I think that I listened to you give a great David Duval story that I'll get on that in a minute. But where I'm going with this is, do you think that club design and club fitting is more science or more creativity and experience?
Well, if you're going to take it from a guy who's 64 years old that did it the way I did, it's way more art than science. I think the science part of it really comes to, we talked a little bit before we started a little bit about 962Bs. That's a perfect example of a golf club where, hey, I needed to make sure that David Duval had a new set of clubs, a new set of DCIs that he could play golf with. I walked into, the head iron designer, Peter Gilbert, and sat down in his office and said, hey, this is what I need. This is what I need it to look like. You put the center of gravities in the right place. You do the back cavity the way you need to do it, but this is how it needs to be done, and this is how it needs to perform. So to me, that's where the science comes from. But the art side is still, hey, when a player puts a golf club down and looks at it and says, wow, this looks really good. The offset looks good. The top line looks good. Turns it over, looks at the sole. It's just one of those things where, that to me is still art. I mean, that's going to the museum and looking at a painting and go, man, this painting looks really cool. And, I can understand what the artist was trying to do. And then sometimes you look at a painting and it's kind of all over the place and you're like, what the heck's going on here?
To me, the time that you were at Titleist almost kind of coincided with the development where Apple was getting very sleek with their designs and creativity. It just seemed like that era, the companies who were doing some great things had the functionality aspect down. So like you said, you had Peter who was doing the design, moving the center of gravity where it needed to be, maybe based off a particular swing. I would have to assume David Duval's was different than Tiger Woods, and it was different than Curtis Strange and Brad Fatt. Everybody had a certain place it needed to be for their swing characteristics. But not only having the functionality really dialed in, so what's under the hood, but the design of the exterior of the car, as you just alluded to, being sleek and designed. Somebody just looks at it and says, wow, this is really, really something to behold.
Well, and I'll tell you a great story how I learned that. I was working before I went to work for Wilson. I was an assistant pro in the Chicagoland area. I had tried to play a little bit on my own. As we all found out, we're good, but we're not that good. Back in the early '80s, and went to work for Wilson. And right about the time, probably about '85 or '86, if you remember, the Ping Zings came out.
Mm-hmm.
Big blade, big high toe. Oh my gosh, if you put this on Iron Byron, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So, the Wilson engineers are like, hey, we need you to show this to the players because, we made this, they made a club and it had big weight on it and all that. And I remember showing it to Hale Irwin. Hale Irwin looks at it and I go, would you hit it for me? He goes, no. I go, why not? He goes, well, first of all, if I have to play this golf club, tell him I quit. Because I'm done. There's no way I'm going to play this club. And and I said, Hale, I said, can you explain that a little bit to me? Because they're telling me this is the greatest thing in the world. Well, he said, hey, if I'm coming down to the last hole of the U.S. Open and I've got to hit a 5-iron on that green and make a par to win the U.S. Open, I ain't looking at that thing. There's no way in the world. I don't care what technology's in it, what's it doing. But if it looks like that, there's no way that I have any confidence that I'm going to hit that on the green.
Hmm.
And I looked at him and I said, that's a great answer. I'll go back and tell them. They're not going to like that answer, but I'll go tell them anyway.
And was it those that had with all that weight up on the top of the toe that they had developed the issue where there was so much torque put on the shaft that they were all snapping the shafts about 2 to 3 inches above the hosel?
Yeah, there would, when you get the center of gravity that far away from the shaft and you create so much, and especially on the toe hits, if you start hitting it a little bit out there on the toe, man, it's going to break. It's kind of like a driver, the original Big Bertha, that,
Mm-hmm.
first driver without a hosel. And all of a sudden people started hitting it in the heel there and they started breaking those things like crazy. So, yeah, I mean, if you try to get extreme with a design sometimes, it's just not going to work.
How did you get started in you were an assistant, you played, but how did you get into the club fitting design side of the business?
Well, so in the wintertime in Chicago, obviously you don't play a lot of golf. I had decided one year not to go down in Florida and try to play the mini tours again. So I stayed around and I was refinishing golf clubs because back in the day, that's 82, 83. We're still playing wood, metal
Hmm.
came out, TaylorMade started in 79. So, there's still a lot of wood out there. So I was doing, so my dad had brought home a set of clubs from, a friend of his that were just absolutely just, I mean, it looked like he took a hammer and just pounded on them. They were not good. So I went and I refinished them and I happened to have them done. And I called my dad up and I said, hey, I'm going to bring these to you and give them to your buddy. He goes, great. He goes, you know what? I'm having lunch with him and I'm having lunch with my other two buddies. Well, the other two buddies were Joe Phillips, who was the legendary vice president of promotion for Wilson, and Bob Lampkin Sr. of, Lampkin Grips. So those were my dad's, lunch and drinking buddies back in the day.
Couple of good
So
guys to know.
good guys to know if you're in the golf business for sure. So I brought the clubs and I handed them my dad and Joe Phillips looks at him and pulls the head cover off the driver and goes, I saw these clubs before you did this. He goes, where did you do this? I said, my parents' garage. He's like, if you can do that in your parents' garage, we need to talk to you. You might have a little bit of talent. And that's where it started. So back in 84, I started, he sent me a note and said, hey, we want to interview you and we want you to bring in and make sure, we'd love to have you be the liaison between the tour players and the R&D department. And I said, sure, that's, it'd be great. And I interviewed with all the engineers and the head of R&D, and I'm like, oh man, these guys aren't going to hire me. There's no way in the world. I'm not, don't have an engineering degree, and to be honest, never graduated from college. Went to college just to play golf, but so never graduated. So I'm like, there's no way in the world these guys are going to hire me. Lo and behold, about 3 months later, I get an offer letter to go, hey, we want you to come take this job. I actually took a pay cut from being an assistant and teaching lessons and went to work for Wilson, but I thought it was, well, hey, might be a good idea to do it for a year or two. If it doesn't work out, just go back to, being a club pro. So
Mhm.
here we go. And just kind of hit the floor running. And, it was real time of transition. We were transitioning from woodwoods to metalwoods, had the whale design in there. And
Oh, I remember that one.
yeah, it was a great time. I mean, it was just, and I can't thank Joe Phillips and Bob Mandrell enough for giving me their expertise and giving me an opportunity to learn because they were so good at teaching and they were so good at just saying, hey, you know what? This might be a little bit more than you're ready to do, but hey, we need a new set of cast irons. You go design it. What? Are you kidding? Really? I mean, I think I can do this. I've watched you do it for a couple years, but holy cow, this is, so I got, it was kind of, it was kind of learning, throw you in the lion's den and let's see what happens.
Did you have a background in tooling and woodworking and things like that you were able? I mean, I can't imagine that you just got on your dad's grinder and started grinding and sanding woods down and irons down and made them look beautiful again and refinishing. So,
Well, when I was 15 years old, I was a pretty decent junior player in Illinois. And my dad came to me one day and he said, hey, you either stop throwing these clubs or you learn to fix them. So I learned to fix them. Well, and it was interesting because my uncle who lived next door to us was the production manager for Northwestern Golf, and a lot of younger people don't even remember who Northwestern Golf is or know who they are. But
Back
you
then,
know,
even into the 80s, they were the #1 selling club company in
oh
history.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. They sold
Kmart,
tons.
through Kmart.
Kmart, yeah,
Yep.
tons and tons of stuff. They had a few tour players. They had Chichi Rodriguez, and they signed Byron Nelson for a while. They had Weisskopf for a while. So I actually played in college with a set of Northwestern forged irons that were only available to the tour. So um, so it was actually, it was pretty cool. So I would just, on Saturdays, my cousin and I would just go and mess around and probably messed up more golf clubs than we made. But, they let us do it. And it was really cool. It was a lot of fun.
Um, I was a big Wilson guy when I first got out. Well, when I was in college and when I got out, Wilson, because that would have been in the early to mid '90s, and Wilson RMs, the Robert Mendrala, the last set that he designed. I had a set of those, and
Yep.
unfortunately, I shipped them when when I went to Titleist. I must have followed your career unknowingly, all the great designs that you have. But when I switched over to Titleist staff, I had sent my cousin who lived in Chicago. Uh, the Wilsons, and I didn't. I said I'm not going to insure them. I've sent dozens and dozens of boxes of clubs to people around the country, and they don't ever get
Right.
stolen. Well, somebody must have known what those were, and they got stolen, and
Oh
I didn't have
boy.
insurance on it. To this day, it still irks me
Yep.
when I think of that. But that had to be a great experience working for somebody, a legendary designer like him.
Well, it was. And, he was so, like I said, he was so willing to teach. He was so willing to just spend time in understand and explain. And I'd stand there and he'd be working on a model, and all of a sudden he'd kind of sit there and he'd stop for a minute, and I'd ask him a question, and I can't remember one time in almost 7 years of working for him that he ever got frustrated or too many questions or whatever. And and basically when they needed an ultra iron design, you know and wanted a cast club to kind of rival Ping I2 and Tommy Armour 845 at the time. He's like, "Hey, you've been out there on tour. You got go do. We'll do it. If you need some help, let me know. But this is your baby." And made the first generation, and the Ultra was good. And I kind of came back, and I'm like, man, geez, God, I could have done the short irons a little better. I could have done this better. And I remember him looking at it and laughing at me, and he goes, "Oh, you're a club designer now, because you look at everything you just did, and you just first came. It's barely out on the market, and you're already picking apart what you did." Don't ever stop doing that. He goes, because if you ever think you make a perfect golf club, it's time to get out of the business.
Yeah, you better quit.
It's
I
time to quit.
remember back then the ultras because Mark McCumber was in the
Yep.
process of remodeling the Ocean Course at Sea Pines, and that's where I was working. And
Yep.
he was a big Wilson guy, and I think he played
Yep.
those.
Yep.
I was an FG51 guy for a long time. It's hard to get those out of my hands.
Yeah, I played. In fact, I remember when we did the Ultra Irons, I went down to Jacksonville and actually worked with Mark. We played the stadium course together, and so I always like to get out on the golf course with guys and see what they do and see what the shots. It's always been, to me, it's one of the things that Mandrella always encouraged, Joe Phillips encouraged. And when I went to work at Titleist, it was kind of like, Wally Uline's like, "Hey, you do this job the way you need to do it." Because right now we don't really have anybody doing your job. So you're writing your own job description. So you get it done the way you need to get it done. So, along with paying attention a little bit, and arguably having a little bit of talent, I've been very blessed with people that have helped me along the way. So you can't do it by yourself.
I remember at that time, through that era, the mid '90s into the early 2000s or late '90s, that there was uh, tour pros who would sometimes switch companies. They would just fall off a cliff I mean, their
Yep.
game would go in the tank. And in large part, I would have to imagine, looking back, was the clubs did not fit them to some way, shape, or form. But of the stable of players you worked with, let's say at Titleist, you had, at that time you had David Duval, he was or Davis Love first, and then
Right.
Curtis Strange, Brad Faxon, if I remember. They were they'd be in their 60s now, early 60s, and then you
Yep.
had David Duval, and then obviously Tiger. I don't remember any of their games taking a big dip because of the club change, and I would just sit there and wonder, like, how come these companies, without knowing who you were at the time, I said, well, whoever is at
Right.
Titleist must know what the hell they're doing. So that's obvious now, decades later. I never understood why some of these companies just could never get it right. And I'm not trying to disparage other
Right.
companies. I'm just looking at historical and saying, how does this happen? Unless they just hire
Well,
the wrong people.
well, failure was never an option for me. So, you know, and I always felt like I learned more from my mistakes than I learned from my successes. Take somebody like Curtis Strange, where you make a set of golf clubs and you send them to him, and all of a sudden you get a phone call and going, not as happy with these as I thought I was going to be. Okay, well, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Are you coming out? You coming out to play Torrey Pines? Are you coming out to the desert? Bring the set of clubs with, let's talk about it. Let's figure them out. Let's take them into a tour truck and let's grind on them and let's make them the way they're supposed to be. So, I can tell you now when somebody walks into my fitting bay, and I always tell people, I said, hey, I'm going to hand you a golf club. And if I hand you a golf club and you don't like the way it looks, or if it doesn't like the way it feels or anything, I said, tell me. This is a two-way conversation. I said, you're not going to hurt my feelings. As my wife says, he's got to, you got to have feelings to get him hurt. So it's probably, you know, not gonna bother me. But, you know, yeah, I've never been afraid to take the feedback, to take the, I don't want to say criticism, but again, I think it goes back to the training from Mandrella, thinking that no golf club's ever perfect. So you have to keep working. You have to keep trying. You can't sit there and make a set of clubs for somebody, and boy, they play good one week and you're just sitting there patting yourself on the back, having a cocktail, thinking you're the greatest club designer in the world, and then all of a sudden they miss 6 cuts in a row. Holy, I won't say the word. Holy crap. What do we do now? Because that text message, that phone call's coming, and everybody's wondering why, Davis or Duval or somebody's missing 6 cuts in a row. What did I do? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And I also tried as much as possible to work with their instructors. Davis is a perfect example with Jack Lumpkin, Butch and Tiger, um, David Duval and his dad, Bob, to understand what they're trying to do with their golf swing. Where are they going? If I'm building a set of clubs today, where's it going? I'll give you a quick story. So one year at San Diego, Nick Watney and Butch Harmon come into the test site at Oceanside. And Nick's working and he's hitting shots. And I walk out there. I was working with somebody else. And, walked out there and I said, how's it going? And Butch is like, yeah, we're just working on trying to get him to draw the ball a little bit. And I said, is he doing what he's doing, what you want him to do swing wise? And he goes, yeah, he's really close. He's 99% of the way there. So he was hitting a 6-iron. And I said, well, you know what? Give me that 6-iron. You hit a 7-iron for a bit. Let me go inside and I'll come back. Went inside. I made the lie angle a degree more upright. Came back out. Now all of a sudden he's hitting these baby draws. Which looks at me and I probably shouldn't say what he said, but he goes, that's why I freaking love you, because you just make it so easy and so simple. But it's it used to be a triangle. It used to be club fitter, player, instructor. Well, now it's kind of club fitter, player, instructor, fitness guy, mental guy, nutritionist. The triangle has kind of turned into, whatever you want to call it, a pentagon or whatever it is. But it has to be that way, and it still is to this day. Even some of the best, some of the best amateur players here in Minnesota, Carson Hare and Tim Herron's son just won the Minnesota State Open. In the Saturday before the tournament started, a couple days before, they texted me and he's like, man, he goes, I'm just lost. My putting's just all over the map, and I've been helping him for a little bit, and helping with his golf equipment. And I said, well, I'm working Saturday. I'm off at 5, and I said, I'll meet you on the putting green at Wayzata Country Club at 5:30, and we'll talk about it. And I got as long as you need me to be there. So he's just kind of fiddling around, and I kind of looked at him, and taking what I've seen Butch and some other great instructors do to their players. I just looked at him and kind of just gave him a 25-minute kick in the butt and said, you know what? You're the best player in Minnesota. Start acting like it. You know what? We cleaned up a little bit in his putting routine. I gave him a little bit of putting routine that I've learned that, spending time around Greg Norman, that I thought Greg's routine is one of the best in golf. And just told him he should do that. And, he went out and shot 10 under, won in a playoff. And last time I looked, he was one shot back in the state am today. So,
Wow.
and, and that's what it is. I mean, I think trying to keep it more simple sometimes is the best way when it comes to golf instruction and club fitting.
It's interesting that you said what you did to Nick Watney's club, because as I got done playing and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had worked in club fitting for a while, and I at that point I had learned that it's not always the archer. It can be a crooked arrow, and you're not going to shoot a crooked arrow straight. Now,
Right.
that doesn't hold true for a 20 handicap who thinks they're going to play once a month and they should be breaking 90. But once you get to certain levels, or you're working at it, and as you said, Butch said he was doing what he wanted him to do. He was just about there, but they still were not getting the result that they wanted. So I have to remind people, in particular some of the better players, when they call me and we'll work on something for a couple of weeks, and they're like, and I watch them on video and I watch them in person. If they're traveling or wherever they are, I get the video. And they said, it's just not happening. And I said, okay, then did you switch clubs or something? Oh yeah. 2 weeks ago, a buddy of mine gave me this 3-wood and this driver and a couple irons, and I really liked them. So I went and got a set. Like, okay,
Right.
you never told me that. So yeah, some people don't understand that until they actually experience it, that it is the arrow sometimes is crooked, and it's not going to shoot straight no matter how much you practice.
Well, and you can't, especially for a better player, you can't give them a set of clubs that really predetermines a shot. I've never understood that, where somebody all of a sudden goes, hey, we're gonna predetermine this shot. We're gonna make it 2 degrees upright. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. We're gonna make the shafts really stiff. I just don't understand where, if I'm trying to play at the highest level, then I'm gonna need that ability to move the golf ball both directions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if I take one of those shots out, that's not a really good thing. That's not going to help that player get better. It's kind of like, we get a lot of kids that are, juniors, high school age. They've come in, they're starting to get some speed. They're starting to play really well. And they come in with, and I don't want to dispel, irons like P790 or, the faster faced hollow body golf clubs, because for a lot of people, it's helped their games a lot. But for a kid that's got speed and that's trying to go to the next level and maybe play D1 college golf, he needs control.
Mm-hmm.
You need to give him something that he can control and he can play with. And all of a sudden this conversation, well, gee, the iron you gave me is flying 5 yards shorter. Well, yeah, but look at the pattern. You can lay a blanket on top of the shots you just hit. Irons are not distance clubs. They're specific distance clubs. You need to hit that, because when you're playing at the highest level, I coached a couple of years I assistant coach for the University of Minnesota and help them out. Last year we're at the Meadow Club north of San Francisco, and the only protection for the golf course was to put these pins in the most ridiculous pin placements I've ever seen on ledges and everything. But so now these kids have to learn, you've got 2 yards in front of the flag and 2 yards behind the flag. If you can't hit that window, you're done. You're making bogey, or you're really struggling to make par. And it's a real eye-opening experience for some of these kids when they make a jump from high school to college golf, how difficult the golf courses really can be. And then, oh, by the way, then you go to the next level and you try to play at the next level, and it doesn't get any easier. And then, oh, by the way, then okay, well, you're just not playing with your players in your class, or playing with kids that are around your age. Now all of a sudden you got guys from 18 years old to 50 years old trying to play, who were the best players in their era, and my great friend Tom Percher tells great stories about playing with Ray Floyd when he was a rookie on tour. He's like, Ray scared the hell out of me. He goes, he just, because Ray knew that, he watched Tom Percher hit golf balls and go, man, this kid's going to take money out of my pocket. I maybe a little bit of the intimidation factor to stop him from taking money. So, that's professional golf. So if you think it's hard in high school, man, it's not even close.
You ain't
It's
seen
not even
anything
close.
yet.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
I remember, as you talk about pins being tucked, I remember when they moved a number of years ago, when they moved the Greensboro Open back to Greensboro Country Club. And then they used Forest Acres for the Monday qualifier. And I think I can't remember, is it 11th hole or 12th hole, but it had a huge false front. And they had the pin set basically 3 steps from the false front. And then there was about maybe 10 steps, if I remember correctly. This is going back 15 years ago. And then it dropped off like the backside. Well, I
Right.
landed the ball 1.5 feet from the hole, and I'm off the back edge of the green, and I hit a great chip, and it rolls out I played ping pong. I think I made double or triple. Now, luckily for me, that might have been the pre-qualifier, but I got through. I think I played pretty well the rest of the day. But I'm sitting there, I just hit it 1.5 feet from the hole, and I walk off the green with a triple.
Right. Right. Well,
How does this
yeah,
make
and
any
yeah,
sense?
I mean, it's just hard. I mean, I remember years ago back in 81, I, was playing Space Ghost mini tours, before there was ever a Corn Ferry or a Ben
Mm-hmm.
Hogan tour or whatever. And, I shot 67 out at Royal Oak in Titusville, Florida. And I remember Mike Hulbert coming in and going, "Hey, nice round, good playing today." It was kind of a rainy day and not the easiest golf course. And Jeff Sluman comes in and goes, "Hey, nice playing." And we're sitting down and we're having something to eat. And I said, "How's the leaderboard out there?" And Bobby's like, "Don't go out there." I'm like, "What do you mean don't?" He goes, "Just don't go out there." He goes, "You played good. Don't go out there." And Dick Mast, who's still playing to this day,
I played with
qualified.
Dick. Yep.
Yeah, Dick shoots 63. I'm like, okay. Well, I missed a makeable birdie putt from about 8 feet on one hole. I hit a bad drive on a birdieable par 5 that I made par on. So I could get my 67 to 65. I can't get it to 63. And we're sitting there talking about it, and Slew and Hubby are like, "Man, we got to practice harder." And I'm like, "Man, I got to get a job." I mean, this is just this, you know, I'm grinding. I'm grinding my whatever off, and we're playing good golf, but we're not playing good enough. And I remember came back and got started working as assistant at the club that I grew up at, and the pro is a great guy, and so then signed up and going to do all the assistant stuff through the PGA, and I did my playing ability test. And back in the day, that wasn't. Now they have a playing ability test. They set them up as separate tournaments. Back then, you had to play in a 36-hole stroke play. And I remember I finished third or fourth in the tournament, and I looked at the PGA guy and I go, "Did I pass my test?" And he started laughing. He's like, "Yeah, by like 15 shots you did or 17 shots or something. He's like, yeah, you're okay. You're good. So that was the advantage of coming off and playing with good players. When you played in the section, I could play pretty well. But yeah, it's a tough road, and it just gets tougher. But that's where your equipment has to be precise. And there's back in the day when there wasn't so much availability or options. You think about it. You go to a tour event now, and there's 13, 15 tour trucks out there. I mean, it's just crazy. To me, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to professional golf is the tour trucks. One of the worst things that's ever happened to professional golf is the tour truck, because you get guys that are blaming, they start blaming their stuff on their equipment, and they tinker too much, and they don't really, they're looking for the magic. Back in the day, back in the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, guys were friends with their clubs. They hung on to them. I remember a great story, probably in about 85 or 86 Western Open. Keith Fergus comes in, really good player, was playing really well, comes in with his old McGregor M85 driver that's never been refinished. I mean, I wouldn't give you $5 for the golf club.
That was a
That's
great
how,
driver, the
yeah,
M85.
great driver, but it looked like it looked bad. It looked like a $5 driver in the barrel. And he said, "Hey, the shaft broke, and I need to fix it." And come to find out, he's like, "Yeah, it's got an X100 in it." Well, it really didn't. By the time I started checking, first step to tip, it was really an R. It was a regular shaft. So I figured, and back in the day, you had R100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. So I figured I'd put the stiffest regular in there and just match up the steps, and took it out to the tournament the next day, and it was hitting it. He was hitting it, and he's like, "Man, this is great. It's perfect. Thanks. You did a great job." And I walked into the tour truck True Temper had, and there was a guy by the name of Dave Rennie. And Dave Rennie ran the True Temper truck forever. And I said, "Yeah," I said, "I had to reshaft Keith Fergus's driver yesterday." And he's like, "Oh, did you put one of those regular X100s in it?" I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "You knew?" And he goes, "Yeah, but I didn't have the heart to tell him because he's won 3 times in the last 15 months. So, you know, just play golf. Just play golf with it."
Wasn't there a Fred Couples story about
Yep.
that I think Tom Watson gave him a 3-wood or 5-wood, and he cut the grip off, and they said, "This is a lady's flex," and he said,
Well,
"Whatever."
what it was actually Tom's ex-wife, Linda Watson's driver. So it was actually, she was using it as a driver, but it was a 13-degree, one of those little ram bore through 3-woods. And he took it out and he started hitting it, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, you can take it." Well, he was messing around on the range one day, and somebody threw, I think maybe Joe LaCava threw a ball, and Freddie swung at it. And he hit the shaft and he bent the shafts. So now he goes into the True Temper truck again to see Dave Rennie, and Dave's like, "Dude, this is like an R100. This is like, the softest men's shaft you can find." So then he's like, "Well, I can't play that. I can't hit that anymore." So they put an X100 in it. He could never hit it good anymore. The 3-wood was gone. The magic was gone.
I'd almost like to hear the backstory on how the hell he ended up with, even though it was Linda Watson's old club, how did Fred Couples end up hitting her 13-degree?
Because he was in Kansas City he was playing some golf with Tom Watson, and was kind of complaining that he didn't have a good 3-wood. And it was in the trunk of the car, and he's like, "Well,
Here, try this.
I got this thing. Why don't you try that?" I mean, I give you a great story. For probably for about 3 or 4 years, Ben Crane used one of my hybrids, because he was in at the test site at Titleist, and he was struggling, and he's kind of struggling with his long iron. He's thinking about going to hybrid, and we really didn't have anything. I got this, or I go, "Wait a minute, I just put this together for myself a few days ago. Played with it once. I go, let me go to the car. Go grab it. Go grab it out of the car. And he just starts striping and looks at me and he goes, "Thanks for the hybrid. You can make yourself another. You can make yourself another one. This one's going with me." And he used it for about 3 or 4 years. So it's happened a few times. I've given some drivers and some wedges away, and yeah, my car stock's pretty good sometimes.
I can imagine it looked like a department store. Of all the players that you've worked with and fit and designed for, was there anyone that when you would see their name on your schedule that you would really say, this is going to be a lot of fun? No matter how many times they came to see you, you just really enjoyed spending time with them. Is there anyone that stands out?
Peter Jacobson, bar none, bar none. Jake was absolutely fantastic. I would do anything, spend any time. I mean, I do that for probably any player, but you know what? He was always fun. Sometimes he'd come in on a Saturday, and I'd bring a couple of my boys with it, and he would just he'd treat the boys like just like they were his own, and you know just amazing, just so much fun. Um, Played a fair amount of golf with him. He took lessons from Jim Hardy, who
Mm-hmm.
Jim's a great friend, and just I mean, you put that on the schedule, and it was great. And then I remember one time he's like, "Hey," he goes, I know he's a Callaway guy, but I'm gonna bring this guy with me because he's really struggling, and he's gonna bring a bunch of clubs." And I go, "Who is he?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to bring Arnold with me." And so, yeah, so here's Arnold with all the Callaway bags and stuff at the Titleist test facility, and I'm like, yeah, well, if I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired for this. But you know what? Damn it, I'll probably get a job. I'll probably get a job with Arnold. So, but he was great, and yeah, so Peter was great. Jay Haas. Jay Haas, no problem at all. And I'll give you a guy. I'll give you a guy that would probably surprise the heck out of you. That I love to work with. I worked with him in the UST days, and after that, Lanny Watkins,
Mm.
which most people would think, oh my gosh, tough competitor. But I'm telling you, what a guy to hang out with. If you're looking for great information on shafts and heads and performance, I mean, he knew his game as well as anybody, and he was phenomenal. Uh, I give you a great Lanny Watkins story. So one year, um, living in Texas at the time, and played golf with him at Preston Trails, and I said, "Hey, you know, one of these weeks you got to come play with me and the guys at my club at Trophy Club, which is the only Hogan designed golf course in America." And so he comes out, plays golf with us, sits, has a couple cocktails, and leaves. It's great. Well, we had a great shoe guy in the locker room and just did a wonderful job. So I was going to grab my stuff and my shoes and going home, and the shoe guy goes, he goes, "You can have Mr. Watkins come anytime." He goes, he's great in my book. I go, "Why is that?" He goes, "Well, he gave me $100 tip for my shoes." So I called Lanny up that night and I said, "Hey, thanks for playing. It was really good. The guys loved it. And I said, "Hey, you didn't have to give him $100 tip." And he goes, "Yes, I did." He goes, "There's enough people in this world that think I'm a bad guy. And the last thing I want is your members and your shoe guy at your club thinking I'm a bad guy. So $100 is well worth it for you not to be a bad guy too." And I just started laughing, and I'm like, you know what? But he was, he was great. He was absolutely great to hang around with, and yeah, just a lot of fun. I remember one time we're we were coming. I was helping him a little bit at Preston Trail, and we were going over to his house to fiddle because he had a work room, and he had loft and lot. He had all kinds of stuff, and all of a sudden there's like this kind of beat up Toyota in the driveway, and I'm like, "Lanny," I go, "Is that like the maid or whatever?" And he goes, "No, no." He goes, "That's my daughter's boyfriend." So we walk in the kitchen, and he's like, "Hey, grab a couple beers and meet me in the room." And well, the boyfriend's Justin Leonard, and I'm like, "Dustin, nice to meet you, Larry Bobka, whatever." I said, "Lanny," I go, "That's Justin Leonard in there. That's not the boyfriend." He goes, "Ah, it's just the boyfriend." He goes, "I don't look, I don't look past the boyfriend stuff. I don't care how good he can play golf. That's just the boyfriend." So yeah, a lot of fun stories like that through the years.
Can are you allowed to tell the story about when Tiger was making the transition because he was with Titleist, but he was playing Mizuno irons in the very early years?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah,
able to tell because the 681T I had a set of the 681s and I still to
right,
this day kick myself for selling those to a friend of mine. But the
right,
T's were the only ones that I would have switched to. But at that time, I was an assistant making nothing, and there's no way I could
right.
afford the T's. But you designed those. Can you go through that story a little bit? Because
Sure,
that's one of the
absolutely.
iconic stories of clubs and golf and golfers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was just kind of at the end of finishing up with Davis Love. Davis came on board, spent some time with Davis, and found out that he really wanted a forging, but he wanted something that had a cavity back in it, and kind of made those handmade set of golf clubs that. So we were finished up. Davis was starting to play some pretty good golf, and it was about the time where Tiger kind of came on board. And at the time, Terry McCabe, who was the head of the VP of R&D, had kind of started with him, but you know, uh, they were struggling a little bit to get what he wanted. So I remember um, Wally Uline's like, "Hey, they're going down to work with Tiger. I'd really like you to go down there and just kind of shadow him and see what's going on and see if you could lend some help to the situation." And I said, "Sure." So I called up Butch, and one of my best friends before he passed away, if you don't know, was Dick Harmon. So
Mm-hmm.
Dick was very special to me, and so I got to know the Harmon family very well. So I called up Butch, and I said, "Butch," I said, "by the way," I said, "I don't know if you know, but I'm coming down, and I'm going to spend a little time." And he goes, "Great." He goes, "Well, let's do this. We're supposed to meet them on the range at 9 o'clock. How about you, me, and Tiger meet in the locker room and have breakfast at 7:30 and talk about what we want and what we need and what he'd like to have." So I walked out. We had breakfast, walked out, and walked down the range, and they were all set up, and all of a sudden it's like Tiger's hitting it, and he's like, "Well, that's okay, but you know, Larry's going to make me a set of clubs, so thanks for your efforts, but this is what we're going to do." So it was a little uncomfortable for a little while, but actually Terry helped with the 681s, and so we ended up, basically in what I learned uh, and I said this in a podcast a couple weeks ago. I had the pleasure of spending 5 days with Tony Penna. And if the people don't know who Tony Penna was, Tony Penna was a good player in his own right, but arguably one of the best club designers ever.
Mm-hmm.
Did all the great stuff in McGregor's for in the 50s and 60s, all the iomatics and all those things. And he would always say, and he told me, he said, "Hey, if you're going to work with great players, you need to look and listen. You need to look at what they're doing, look at their clubs, look at their body language, listen to the golf shots, listen to what they say, and listen to what they don't say. You have to kind of dissect what they're doing and you know figure it out from there." So to me, that was sitting at breakfast. I'm just sitting there and listening to Tiger talk about what he likes in a golf club, what he wanted to do, and Butch saying, "Hey, this is the kind of flight I need. This is," so I'm just listening to these guys, and in my head, I mean, I kind of walked away after about an hour and a half going, "Man, I can just go get on an airplane. I don't even need to watch him hit a golf shot and go build him a set of golf clubs." And basically I said, and I took it from kind of the old school way, which is, Tiger, I'm going to build you 3 sets of golf clubs. And, you're going to have 3 2-irons, 3 3-irons, 3 4-irons, 3 5-irons, and so on. So pick the best 2-iron, pick the best 3-iron. Then the one that's slightly behind it becomes your backup set. And set number 3, I don't care if you give it to your buddies, give it to your caddy, whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter to me. So we did that. And, and a lot of people said, well, how many sets did it take? And, it's 3, but they were 3 identical sets. Did we make a few tweaks down the road? Yeah. Were there conversations about the soul and some things? And, we'd be starting to grind some stuff, and he'd be like, he'd talk to me and he's like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? So the original set came from a couple different sets of forgings that Titleist already had, that we manipulated the lofts and lies and offsets and things, and turned it into an iconic set of golf clubs. And then the tees and the 681s were basically copies off of those. So we didn't have to hand make them every time, because the process of hand making a set of golf clubs from another set of golf clubs, if you're changing offsets, if you've ever seen, and probably nobody knows, a lot of people think, well, you change the offset, you put it in the loft and line machine, and you bend it with the bars. Well, now I've got an elbow and a shoulder to tell you that I did it with a rawhide hammer in a block, in old school way. So yeah, that's why everything on my left side hurts every day.
Was not that there have, if you ever look at chat rooms on this, and there's, and to this day, there's still probably debates of just maybe people that don't know, or just have the assumption based off a friend of a friend of a friend who told them. But as far as who did the forgings, or some of the work, was it Hoffman, who I believe at that time was in Tennessee, or was
Yep.
it Endo out of Japan?
Well, the original clubs were Hoffman forgings. They were 2 different sets. They were the only ones left in the U.S. that were making any forgings. But we had a lot of old forgings at Titleist that worked out well for us. And then the 681s went over. Then we took them over to Endo, and Endo did their work, and turned them into a set, because we knew that, if we're going to mass produce these, we didn't have the capability at Titleist anymore to grind that many sets of golf clubs. So it just made sense to take them to Endo. And the guy who ran it at the time was Kenji Kobayashi, who is now involved in Grindworks that Patrick Reed plays. And he was just a great guy, and very open to, hey, this is how we're going to make them, and we're going to make them as specific to your needs as you can. And they did a wonderful job. They were awesome. So,
if, well, to use a Steve Jobs quote, if I remember correctly, said something to the effect of that good artists create and great artists steal. And when it comes to club design, from at least what I was educated on, was that from a physics standpoint, or a playability standpoint, that going back to the 50s, engineers knew what the heel to toe length should be, the sole to the top line, the hosel length, the hosel depth, all those things, so that the club could function as it was designed to function, without doing anything, as we talked about earlier, with moving massive amounts of weight towards the toe, etc. When working within those parameters, how would you design a club, especially for some of the tour pros, based off their swing characteristics and what they and their coach wanted to see, or would you design it off of what you thought they needed, or was it a combination of both? And within that parameter of knowing how long a hosel could be, or how long the heel to toe could be, and so on.
all of the above.
That makes sense. Giving your success.
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I mean, I never wanted to limit what I thought was a great golf club, or what I thought they needed. If they were looking for something from a toe shape, or a blade length, or a sole, I'm going to make a golf club because if they feel comfortable with it, they can play it. So, and there was a lot of times where, hey, we would do a set of clubs and then somebody would be like, you talked about the sole being a little different. Can we go back to what you said? I thought I needed this, but this might be a better thing for me. So from that standpoint, and I never looked at it and said, oh, I can't believe you didn't listen to me and you're not going to take the club the way I want. I mean, that's not your job.
Hmm.
One of the things I learned on really early from Joe Phillips, the first time I ever went to a tour event as a Wilson tour rep, we're getting out of Joe's Cadillac at the Western Open, and I get out of the passenger side and I open, get out, I close the door, and I take about 3 steps, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "Do you have an ego?" I'm like, well, that's kind of a strange question, and I'm like, well, of course, everybody has an ego. He said, well, hey, do me a favor. He goes, go open that car door, take your ego and throw it on the passenger seat, because we're going out to work with tour players and it's all about them and it has nothing to do with you. Okay. That was 40 years ago and it still rings true to this day, whether it's a PGA Tour player or a 15 handicapper or ever walking in my bay. I always look at them and go, you know what? For whatever time I'm with you, it's all about you. It's all about making sure you walk out of here feeling comfortable, feeling like you've had input into this decision, and that we've created a bond together to get you a better set of golf clubs. And it might sound, some people, well, you don't do that. What I do, I think anybody who's successful does that. I mean, you go to a doctor and you're not feeling well. I mean, you want that doctor to kind of bond with you, to feel like you're going to get the best care, right? Or, you're going to remodel your house. I mean, you want to get somebody who's going to care about it and do a nice job. I mean, to me, anybody that's successful is going to you have to create a little bit of bond or relationship with that customer to get them to go, hey, this is going to be the best for you. We're going to work together and you're going to play better golf. I mean, I can't tell you the text messages and the emails I get from people going, man, I just can't believe, I feel so good about my putting. I feel so good about my new set of irons. I can't believe how, you know, how well that went. And well, it's my job.
Been doing
I,
this for 40 years. I'm an expert at it.
I'm doing it, but you know, I think I think especially in fitting, and I think maybe what's gotten a little bit lost in this world is, with some younger people, is you need some bedside manner. You need to be able to connect with that person and connect at different levels. I mean, I get guys that come in and they'll have 4 pages printed out of all the golf clubs they want to try and all the shaft options and everything. And I kind of look at them and go, okay, well, that's fine. I don't think we need all of this, but if you think so, and then I ask them, I go, are you an accountant or a lawyer? Oh, I'm an accountant. Oh, that explains it. Yeah, because they're very analytical. That's what they do. That's their brain, is they're thinking about it, and they're going to be very analytical.
Yes, it's their language. Engineers usually fall into that category as well.
Right. And then you get other people coming in and it's like, hey, I don't care what it is. I just need to hit my irons better. I need to drive it better. I don't care what it is, what the specs are, but if I can go out and drive the golf ball better, you will have made my day.
Now, you, after all the years of working for some other company, you have your own product line,
I do.
wedges, clubs,
I
and
do.
you got some. Do you have anything new prototypes or anything that you're working on that are coming out
I have
soon?
I have I'm working on a set of irons that'll be available sometime in probably early 2025. So yep, another set of irons. But yeah, we kind of created this handmade sticks brand at Second Swing to kind of bring a lot of small, the Lamont Mans and Tad Moore and Clay Long and Weston Mon and all these people kind of bring them together, have a place where they can put some of their stuff up there and people can find a place. And, so then, we're sitting and having a meeting one day and our CEO, Simon, goes, so what are you going to do? I go, what do you mean? What am I going to do? He goes, well, you're gonna be part of this. You're not getting away without not doing any golf clubs. I'm like, all right. So, so now I did a putter first, and then had some forged wedges, and so then I was kind of dabbling with a set of irons, and so now I get these finished iron heads sitting on my desk, and he walks by and he's like, "What are those?" I go, "Well, you told me I could do things." He's like, "How many sets do we have?" And I go, "This is it. This is set number one." He goes, "Can we sell these?" And I'm like, "No, we can't sell these yet. I haven't even hit these yet. I haven't even hit the finished product yet." And, so then, so once again, it's another person in my career that has been very helpful and accommodating and just making it very easy for me to do the things that I like to do. And now we're working on I'm working on the next generation, and so it's fun. It's fun to dabble, and it's fun to get a chance to do some things that maybe I didn't do before. You know, uh, Toying with the idea of, for the first time with a set of golf clubs, actually putting my name on them. I have never put my name on a golf club before. So yeah, so that might happen. We'll see. That graphics and artwork are always up to debate till the final, to the end. So
Yeah, I could imagine the functionality side is kind of,
right.
physics is physics and what it is, and the playability, and but the creative side, God, that could go, as you said earlier when we were talking, that you could look at a painting and that one looks great, and this one I have no idea what they were trying to do.
Oh my gosh, you could. I mean, I can't tell you the meetings over the years between having worked at Wilson and then helped starting UST and then going to Titleist, and the marketing meetings I've sat in for all the years and trying to decide names, colors. I'm like, oh my, after a while, you're like, I sat in, we had a little marketing meeting at Second Swing, and I'm kind of sitting there, and Simon's like, you're not saying much. I'm like, man, I'm just thinking about how many of these meetings I've been in over 40 years. you know, no disrespect to any of you, but I'm not bored with it, but it's like, man, I've been to this meeting before. So
I've got to ask you, especially with equipment being such a hot topic of debate in the game for the last couple years, and really picked up some steam of late with the talk about the golf ball. But just your opinion on, do you think that a rollback would serve a purpose, or are you more in the camp of, this is everything advances, automobiles, we went from horses to carriages to Henry Ford to now we got electric cars, and pretty soon they'll probably be flying at some point. But did you have an opinion either way that you'd be willing to discuss? I don't want to get you in trouble with anybody.
oh no, that's fine. I discussed it a little bit on a couple podcasts before, so that's okay. No, I do have an opinion. I think it's more than the golf ball. I think you know you take a look at it, and at age 64, I grew up with persimmon woods and steel shafts and shorter golf clubs, and a golf ball that spun more, and then I've been there through the entire progression. I've seen metal. I've seen the golf ball get harder. I've seen titanium. I've seen the heads so it's really not just a golf ball issue. I mean, if you look at the drivers now that players play, and you go to a tournament, you watch players hit drivers, nobody hits a foul ball anymore,
Mm-mm.
because the head size is so big. The ball doesn't curve as much. Back in the day, I can tell you, playing high school and college, man, if you hit a bad shot with a Bellata ball and persimmon wood, you were 2 fairways over, trying to figure out how in the world you're going to get back to the green. it doesn't happen like that anymore. Okay,
Mm-mm.
the best players in the world. So it's really not, to me, it's really not just a golf ball issue. When the driver size went to 460, now it's like you've opened the door. You've got lighter shafts. You got longer club. I played a 43.25 inch driver in high school and college. Now my driver's 45.5. It's two
Yeah,
inches
your
longer.
3-wood's about the length of your old driver now.
Yeah, I mean it's 2 inches. It's 2 inches longer. It's lighter. I got a bad back, artificial hip. I still drive the ball a decent distance for an old guy that's fallen apart. So you kind of get to the point where, well, okay, you're going to attack the golf ball, but why not look at the other things too? To me, I'm one of those guys that I think there should be bifurcation, just like in the major leagues with wood bats to metal bat. College players play with metal bats, and then they go to the major leagues and they have to go play wood.
Mm-hmm.
Why not shrink the size of the driver head? Why not make it a little bit smaller? You can roll the ball back a little bit. But there's a lot of things that change. Back in the day, hey, the grass wasn't cut that short. We play golf courses that are much firmer and faster than we ever played before. So, to look at it as just a golf ball problem, it really doesn't work. And I kind of go back to the groove ruling in 2010. The USGA is like, man, we're gonna stop this bomb and gouge by making the grooves go back to basically old style grooves where they're not going to be able to spin the ball, and that'll get them hitting less club off the tees, and it'll make accuracy more important. All I remember is, my buddy Marco Mera comes in, and Mo's always been a great guy, and there's another guy if you want to spend some time with and always enjoy it. You can add him to that list. So, Mo comes in, and it's like, hey, here's the new groove, and he's hitting it. And I go, what do you think? He goes, well, it's going to play a little different. It's not going to spin quite as much. He goes, I'll have it down in a week. We'll be good. And as we can see, it really hasn't done anything to
And done
score.
anything. Guys
Guys,
hit
yeah.
driver more.
Well, and the worst thing is it's hurt the average player because we took spin away from the average player. We took in not so much in the wedge play, but in the irons. One of the great things about Ping I twos were, yeah, they were a cavity back iron with offset, but they had grooves that spun. That's why players hit it in the air. When you took the spin away from players, now you made it more difficult for the average player to play. I'm of the sort that it's like, hey, let's dial it back for the elite players, but why not open it up a little bit more for the average guy? Why not make a 500cc driver? Why not make a faster ball? I play with, this afternoon I'm going to play with my younger guys at Chaska Town Course, which is one of the sites for the USAM this August. And so they hit it farther than I do. But then on Mondays, I go play Bluff Creek with my buddies who are all older than I am. So, they range from 69 to 76. Let me tell you something. That conversation after the round, nobody's sitting there going, man, I'm hitting it too far. This new driver and ball combo for me. I mean, I can't believe I'm hitting it as far as I am. No, there's none of those conversations going on. Okay. And I can tell you this. There is in 5 years of working at Second Swing, there is not one person that has walked in my bay and said, you know what? I hit my driver too far. We need to dial this thing back. Okay. I'm of the mind because that to me also allows the engineers at the golf companies to expand the technology, to use their expertise and their knowledge and their brain power to make some clubs and golf balls that are better for the average player to make the game more fun. But on the other side, hey, let's figure out how we can dial the game back, because the problem is you got these kids coming out and they're, every one of them, They're swinging hard. They already have, they have instructors. They have fitness guys. I mean, we got a kid here that's going to University of Illinois by the name of Jake Birdwell, and I work with Jake on his golf clubs. And last time he was in, when he cranks it up, club head speed's almost 140 miles an hour.
Ooh, Jesus.
140 miles an hour. He can get to 137, 138, no problem. I mean, he's driving it 350, 355, 360. And there's a whole generation of these kids coming up. And to me, the problem isn't so much on the PGA Tour or the USGA events, but how do you hold a state open? How do you hold a state am? You're limiting the golf courses that these kids can play at. I mean, they played last year. I mean, there's some great golf courses around here, and they played Minnesota Golf Club last year. And I'm telling you, the first hole was a par 5. They're hitting drivers and gap wedges because it's downhill, downwind. The hole's 510 yards. They're hitting drivers and gap wedges to it. This is to me that's the problem. That's where you have to look and go, is if I'm running a state golf association, where do I take my state AMs and my state opens to?
Or you're just going to have to adjust par. You have to change some of those par 5s to par 4s
Right.
if they're hitting.
Yeah,
You can't have
as
them
it
hitting.
become par 69 or par
Mhm.
68 or whatever it is. But still, I mean, to me, that's the issue. That's the issue in the game right now, and I think that's where I would like to see, the USGA, and I don't, where they stand and what they're talking, but I'd like to see that split. And we've always, everybody's always talked about, well, you can go buy the same thing a tour player plays, and that's why it makes the game so good and whatever. But I would much rather, as a fitter, I'd rather walk into a bay and have a guy that's, my age or even less, or, a good female player, and you go, you know what? Hey, I got this new driver that's 500 cc's, and it's super high COR, and I can hit this a long way. And what does it matter? I just think you have to think a little bit outside the box, that you try to keep the traditions of the game. And trust me, I'm as traditional as anybody. I still have a set of blades in my bag. You can
Yeah, your
ask my wife.
Instagram page, you have plenty of woods in your bag,
Oh,
like
I got
woodwoods.
Woodwoods, and still play some rounds with Woodwoods. So, but the game at the highest level, I think, really needs a real think tank to figure out, hey, where is golf going to be? It's 2024. What's golf going to look like 10 years from now? How are we going to play the game? What's the game going to look like? What's the equipment going to look like? And I think for the enjoyment of the game, for the average player, I would just open up the COR. I'd make the ball a little bit faster, because there are struggles with that too. If the ball gets faster, it's harder to stop on the green.
Mm-hmm.
So, is somebody really going to play that? Is that what they're going to want? I don't see a problem with making a driver a little bit faster for the average player. I'd take one tomorrow.
If I had the time,
And I can,
money,
yeah,
and the
go ahead.
effort, if I had the time, money, and the effort, I would make a handicap system that somehow, with all the numbers and science guys in that field, that could figure out a handicap system for you could play anything that you want to. Now, you can't put Vaseline on the face so the ball
Right.
goes further, but any equipment that you want, any manufacturer makes, you can make it, and that will be in this system. And then that would allow for something like that. So
Right.
somehow make that work. If you could get that to catch on, I think a lot of people would utilize that.
Well, I can tell you, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I will say this. So, through the years when new drivers were coming out, and we were COR testing and making sure everything was legal, and they were going to the PGA Tour, there might have been an off chance that when the guys in R&D were testing it, I might have asked them for the highest COR driver, just It might have found its way into my bag once or twice.
Might have made its way into the trunk, the
It might have
famous
found its way.
Bobka trunk,
It
and
might
then
have
the
found
bag.
its way in the trunk. But on the other side of that, though, you go and do, hey, for me, it averaged and maybe then was a little bit above average speed. Did it really matter that much? No, nobody ever said, "Oh my gosh, you're driving it 30 yards farther than you ever drove it." And I'll tell you a really quick funny story. So when I turned 50 14 years ago, I tried to qualify for the U.S. Senior Open, and the week before I was with Peter Jacobsen and Jay Haas and Mark O'Meara, and they're like, "Hey, you got to qualify, man." And we were giving out new 910 drivers. That's when the 910 came out. And they're like, "Man, you got to qualify. You got to, it'd be so much fun. How about the four of us playing a practice round?" I'm like, "Yeah, everybody be like, those three guys, and who's the other guy? You don't know the other guy." And I go, "The only reason you guys want me to play with it because I can work on your golf clubs and watch what you're doing." Well, yeah, of course it is, right? It's not about you. So, so now I've got a new 910 driver. Nobody else has a 910 driver because they're not out yet. And a few of the guys that I know, the local pros in Southern California, are hitting it like, man, this is really good. So we get on the ninth hole, and in the practice round, I think I probably drove it about 30 yards from this water, and I was playing pretty good. And I hit my drive, and I almost, I knock it about 5 yards from the water. And my youngest son's on the bag, Brian, and he goes, "Dad, walking on the fairway," he goes, "Is that driver legal?" He goes, "You got nowhere near this in the practice round. How'd you get so close to it?" I said, "Well, I'm a little pumped up." And I said, "Shh, stop talking about that." So now we get on, I don't know, 12th or 13th hole. It's a dog leg left. The
It's gonna make
ball
you pee
does
in a cup after the round.
Yeah, ball doesn't dry. Ball doesn't dry. Drive it through the fairway, and he's like that. He goes, "There's no way this driver's legal. You are too old and too fat to hit it that far." He goes, I'm like, "Would you shut up? You can't say this." So, then the funniest part about this round. So now we're on the 16th hole, and it's a reachable par five. I missed the green to the right. I hit this beautiful pitch over the bunker, and it stops about 5 or 6 feet away. And there's a USGA official there going, "Hey, just want to make sure you got grooves," because this was the 2010 groove ruling that you got to have conforming grooves. And he goes, "Are you sure those grooves are conforming?" And I went into my bag and I pulled out my business card. He said, "Sir, I'm the senior vice president of Golf Club Promotion Titleist. If anybody in this field has legal grooves and knows what a legal groove's in, it's got to be me." And he kind of looked at me and he goes, "Nice shot." Got in the car and drove away. I mean, he didn't have anything to say. He had no return on that. He's like, "No, I guess you would." So yeah, I'll just get my cart and I won't bother you anymore.
I'll leave you alone. You're good.
Yeah, you're good.
To wind down, do you have time for an emergency nine? It's just kind of nine random
Sure,
questions.
sure,
And I
of
know
course.
I told you I'd get you out of here at a certain time, and I want to make sure I honor my word. So the first one and last one everybody gets are all the same. The ones in between we kind of update from time to time. So you've got some new ones, but a couple of the
Okay,
other traditional ones. So I always ask them if the Ryder Cup, they have the walk up song to the first hole. But if
right.
you were walking up to member guests as you're a member at a club, what song are you going to have them crank out to get the crowd going a little bit?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Let me think about it for a second.
Because you've lived through an era through some great music.
Yeah, yeah. Big country fan though. Um, I would probably, I don't know. That's a really good question. Uh, you know, huge Johnny Cash fan. Huge, no, just love country music, older country music. But yeah, a lot of good stuff. You know, I would probably, you know, one of my favorite bands back in the day and back in the era was ELO. So I would probably find something from Electric Light Orchestra to 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 walk me up.
Okay, perfect. The most used app on your phone.
Gosh, if you ask my wife, it's probably Instagram. If you ask me, yeah, I would probably say it's Instagram.
I'm probably up there. Instagram or Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, has been
Yeah,
getting
I'd go
kind of fun.
Instagram.
All right. Your favorite purchase in the last year under $500?
Oh, under $500. Um, Actually, one of my big hobbies is shooting. So I would say probably my Taurus 856 38 special.
Nice. We have a lot of similar hobbies: golf, shooting.
Well, shooting to me it's one of the rare things that for an hour or 2 hours just takes me away from golf. And there's
Mm-hmm.
very few things that take me away from golf, and it's something that just my wife and I do it together, and it's just one of those things that just gets me to concentrate on something other than the game of golf, which has been in my life for since I was 6 years old. So 58 years of it. So
And it has a lot of crossover, a lot of similarities where you're
yep.
focusing, you're taking time off. The time to pull the trigger is not very long, because somewhat similar to a golf swing. It's about a second, and then you have a lot of time to think. So it makes total sense that a lot of golfers are into shooting.
Well, and you also and it's the equipment too.
Yes.
From whether you're shooting a revolver, you're shooting a 9 millimeter, the type of sights, everything else. So the equipment side of it, and to me, it's been kind of fun learning the equipment side of you know getting a handgun and understanding what type I shoot the best.
Yeah, my dad would tinker with his clubs. I mean, he's 81 now. This is going for the last 5 to 10 years in the basement. He was a Pennsylvania guy, so he would spend a lot of time out in the woods and shooting and hunting. And I asked my mom, I said, "Why does he keep buying all these clubs?" She goes, "Leave him alone. He goes down there with his clubs and his guns, and I get peace and quiet for hours on end. It's great."
Yeah, yeah, just leave him alone. He's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, don't do
Um,
it.
Heads or tails? Heads, you get to play golf with Tiger Woods at Augusta National, or tails, you never get to play again. You flip a coin. Are you going to take that flip?
No.
I don't think I blame it. Tiger and Augusta is a pretty thing to shoot for, but not to not ever play again if you lose.
No, I would miss out, this afternoon playing with three great friends that I've made here in Minnesota, and the laughter and the enjoyment of doing that. Watching my buddies who are in their 60s and early 70s, shoot their ages.
Hmm.
No, I wouldn't give that up for one round of golf.
Don't
No way.
blame you.
And playing with my kids, not a chance.
What is worse, iron covers or a well done steak? I thought you'd get
Well,
a kick out of this one. This is a new one.
yeah, well, geez, I think my wife probably gave you that one because she's pretty good at getting her steaks cooked pretty well. Not well done, but medium well. Uh, I'd go iron covers because
Okay.
I could choke the well done steak down with some good red wine, so I'd be okay.
Um, your goat of all the courses you've been to, I'm sure you've had plenty of hot dogs at the turn. So if you had one condiment to go to on your hot dog, what's it going to be?
Oh, it's mustard. I'm from Chicago.
Chicago style.
Yeah, yeah. There is. Well, if somebody says ketchup, they should be thrown off the show.
Okay. Couple more. If you could sit in a golf cart, talk to anybody you wanted to throughout history, who would it be?
Right now,
Anyone you want to,
my dad.
alive or past.
My dad.
That's probably the number one
Yeah,
of everyone I've had on the show, and
thousand
rightfully
percent.
so.
1,000%. He
You,
he made me who I am. So
that's awesome. Um, if you could put a restaurant in your kitchen, any restaurant, any chain, fast food or otherwise, who are you gonna put in there?
oh, Portillo's.
That is a great one. I
Yeah,
my
thousand.
most of my family's from Chicago, so I'm very familiar with
Yeah,
a lot of the Chicago.
1,000%. Yeah, yeah. You can start bringing them in now. I'd be fine.
God, I might have to have a steak sandwich or shaved beef for dinner now. God, you
Yeah.
got it in my head. And then the last question, because that you have seen both of the people that would be in this debate. In your opinion, who's the as far as golfers the greatest of all time?
I think you have to go. I think you have to go with Mr. Nicholas. I think you have to go with Jack. Um, from a record, from a standpoint, and no disrespect to Tiger, spent a lot of time with Tiger. I've also had the pleasure and the opportunity to meet Mr. Nicholas on multiple occasions. Walk practice rounds with him at the end of his career with players. Um, he just he just dissected a golf course. You know, he just knew how to play. Um, you know, I had the opportunity a couple times before he passed away to meet Mr. Hogan. Never saw him play in his prime. Uh, you know, you got to throw Byron Nelson in there too, but I think you have to just go with Jack. Jack was just, you know, so many second places, so many. I just, yeah, I would go with that, you know, and actually one of my most prized possessions that I have is I have a 1967 uh, McGregor W271, which was a limited edition driver they made for his win at the Masters, and on the crown it's engraved Jack Nicklaus, and above that I have Mr. Nicklaus signed it for me.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I pretty special. And I just think that, you know, you look at that, you know, both those guys are so close, but I'm just going to give the nod to Jack.
I asked that because it's I think Tiger's in the lead, but it's been more age specific. So anybody over 55 really has gone heavily towards Jack Nicklaus. Anyone
Right,
under has gone heavily towards Tiger. So I think it's
right,
your era specific. But
yeah,
I would say Tiger's probably leading 60-40, but that would kind of match the age demographic of who I had on the show.
right.
But it's a good question, I think, and if
Well, and
you're
it's a
right
good,
either way.
yeah, and it's a good question, and I think a really cool question, and one of the things that I've seen over the years is, if you kind of ask me specifically, who is the best driver, who is the best iron player, the best fairway, there's a different name for every one of those, which is really cool. And so, that to me is like, if you're talking about somebody driving the golf ball, I mean, you got to pick Greg Norman.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, nobody drove it longer and straighter. I don't care if it was a wood or a metal wood. He was the guy. You look at fairway woods, Hale Irwin all day long. Okay, irons. Let's split up the bag. Jack Nicklaus, best long iron player ever. Those towering 1, 2, 3 irons you hit. You middle of the bag, the short irons, you got to go with somebody like Johnny Miller.
Mm-hmm.
He in his heyday, nobody hit it straighter. Wedge play, it's Seve all day long. Nobody, just an absolute magician with a wedge. And putter, boy, that is an absolute tie. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Crenshaw and my very good friend Brad Faxon.
I don't think anybody's going to argue with you on those.
Yeah, so that to me, that's my perfect golfer. I mean, if you could throw all those people together, I mean that you got somebody special.
In just listening to some of your other podcasts you've been on and other things, there's a bunch of stories that I could sit here and ask you for hours on end. So you have an open invite, and I'll send you one in maybe
Perfect.
later this year to come on. We'll just
Okay.
do Larry Bobka stories. That'll be the title of it. But Larry, I can't thank you enough that after listening to today's show and at least getting to meet you virtually, there's no surprise on why everyone refers to you as Larry the Legend. I really appreciate it. Let everyone know. I'll have it in the summary with one-click links to all your stuff, but let everyone know where the best places are to follow you or reach out if they want to come do a fitting through you. Or
Well, the best thing, best place to follow, you can follow me on Instagram. And, if they want to come do a fitting, the best thing is to just go on secondswing.com and just book a fitting with me. And, you get an hour, but, like my wife says, sometimes, an hour with me, personal contact's highly overrated. So, be careful what you wish for. But no, um, as I like to say, there's not many things in this world I know. Maybe this is the only one. So I got this covered pretty good. So
yeah, you know a hell of a lot.
I enjoy spending time with players and helping players at all levels get better. And it's just one of those things to me that, I've been very blessed, like I said, in my career. I guess got some God-given talent to be able to connect with people and understand what they need with their golf equipment. So I've been very lucky.
Perfect. It's been awesome, Larry. If you hang out for just 1 minute, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
Perfect.